Hello and welcome to Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started. Our catalyzing statement is a successful entrepreneur inside of every business. Enjoy this module. Welcome to Module 4, the new profit paradigm. And we're going to have some fun with this one. You know, it's always fun to talk about profit. And this particular theme, and literally a formula that you have that you'll be presenting, Rick, talks about a new perspective on what profit really means. And when you apply this formula and these concepts to your business, it changes everything. And the one thing I can say as a conclusion is that it made profit a lot more fun for me. I've always run profitable businesses, that's one thing. But it made profit more fun and gave more profit with less stress. So the new profit paradigm, I think it's something you'll get pretty quickly. I don't think it's overly complicated, the themes or concepts, but I think it has profound impact. And it's like anything else. I think a lot of what you're learning here, you'd say, well, I've heard that before, I kind of understood that. But the difference is when it's a principle versus it's just something you know. When it becomes a principle that you live by, it changes everything as compared to saying it's something I read in a book or something I heard. So I'm really excited to get into new profit paradigm. I think we'll have some fun with it. So why don't you explain what the new profit paradigm is?
Well, before I talk about the paradigm itself, I want to talk about the word principle. And I like that you refer to these as principles, right, because they really are. But the interesting thing about principles is the fact that they are leverageable. And if you recall earlier, we said we're going to keep talking about these words: simplicity, probability, and leverage. Let me tell you why a principle is leverageable. People often go through life, especially business people, looking for the answer. And a lot of times the answer is found in principles. An interesting thing is I know of a football coach who recently took over a famous football team. I won't say who it is. And all he did was he made the players come to practice on time and focus on blocking and tackling. It sounds cliche, but the football team went on to win the first 8 games after he became coach. And it's interesting, but a lot of coaches, even at the pro football level or any sport, it doesn't have to be football, they're looking for the answer too. And the fact is the answer often lies in principles.
Right.
So profit is fun, and I want to talk about the new profit paradigm. When you look at your implementation guide, you'll see the formula for the new profit paradigm, and you'll see a P with a 4 next to it equals R squared over EV, and they both have arrows next to them. When you look at your implementation guide, you'll also see what those symbols correspond to.
So let's review the formula again for a second. It's P4 equals R squared over E small v. So we'll slide the formula in right now so you can see what that looks like. And it is also in the implementation guide. What do all these characters mean?
Before I talk about the characters and what they mean, let's talk about the old profit paradigm.
Okay. Circle back.
And the old profit paradigm is really the current profit paradigm. It's how people think about business. What I'd like you to do is embrace this new profit paradigm. And the new profit paradigm is a shift in thinking. But to be crystal clear, the old profit paradigm is more about when you think about starting a business, what do you think about? For yourself, what do you think about? And most people would say, well, I have to get an office. I have to make sure I have the right logo and the right name. I have to hire an attorney, go to an accountant. I have to spend money.
Startup costs is what it's referred to. You have all these startup costs. I know a lot of people who are professionals, who get out of professional school and they got to start some sort of a practice, and they say, oh, well, exactly what you said. You got lease, you got to hire different professionals to set things up, you got to file registration. And they literally have many times this formula that you need X amount of dollars of startup costs to get this whole thing going. And then the theme was, incidentally, when maybe I'm a little old now, but the theme was, if by the end of your first year you could break even, try to recoup those startup costs and kind of break even on your cash flow, that was considered a major success that very few new businesses ever did that. And that's the old profit paradigm.
Right. It's all about spending money. And a lot of people actually enjoy spending money. They feel good about the fact that they're spending money. Well, I raised it from relatives. I raised 200,000 as an example. Now I got to spend it. The reality is, Patrick and I would like to introduce you to the concept of win, then play. Imagine if the Super Bowl, the people who are behind the Super Bowl, weren't paid anything until the game was actually played. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, it doesn't really matter to the organizers of the Super Bowl who wins. They're gonna make money no matter what. You follow what I'm saying?
And further, it doesn't matter if it's a good game or not. In other words, all the time is sold, all the money is collected. They've made their revenue before the game ever occurs. So what happens is that it could be a blowout, it could be a boring game, very low scoring game, what have you. Doesn't matter. They already won before the game was ever played.
And the new profit paradigm is about win then play as one component. But the old profit paradigm, to go back to that, is all about you as the business entrepreneur getting tied up in long-term commitments. Salaries are long-term commitments, leases are long-term commitments, advertising plans. I know even a new entrepreneur, I was shocked to find out that this person was paying their lawyer a monthly retainer every month. That is insanity. On top of that, they get into marketing plans. I've heard of new companies using PR firms on a monthly basis. Again, insanity. So that's the old paradigm. There are actually ways, believe it or not, where as a startup small business person, you could find people in your business that would be willing to give space to you on a month-to-month basis so you could build up your practice or your company. Think about that. Rather than having any dollars, and they already have the phone system and the computer system and all of the stuff in place. That's just one way to think about the beginnings of getting acclimated to the new profit paradigm. So let's go back to the formula, and we're just going to focus on the left side.
Okay, so if you bring the formula up again for a second here, you'll see it's P4.
Right.
So what are the 4 Ps?
Okay. When you look at the letter P, we're going to come up with 4 words that start with P. The first is profit, and that's money. We want to make sure that you make a lot of money. And the interesting thing about business is the more money you make, the more you can fuel the future, because you're going to be excited, your employees will be excited, your shareholders, if you have them, your clients, whatever. Everybody likes to be around profit.
Sure.
The same thing is true of the other 3 Ps. The next one is people. You have to have a system to gather, bring in great people. And you had asked me once in the past, what do you mean by people? Great employees, great clients, great vendors, all of the things when it comes to people that cause you grief in your business are always around people. And if you think back to the earlier module, the doorman, so you have to surround yourself with great people, and you have to have methodologies to figure out who the good people are for your business. So if you go back to the module on the doorman, values-based decision-making, that's the second P. And
incidentally, just to kind of highlight on that for a second, profit needs to be fun. So you have the profit, which is, again, old paradigm almost exclusively is just here's the dollars of profit. But in order to get those dollars of profit, you had to disadvantage employees, or you had to work with vendors that you just don't like, that you despise. When the vendor call comes, you're not looking forward to seeing them, etc. Or you have customers that are not happy with you. Somehow the people are not properly integrated as a positive effect of the profit. In other words, you're adding value to their life. The people who are connected to the profit, basically, you're adding value to the life of the people who are connected to the profit. So it's not just I get the profit or the company gets the profit, but the people who are connected to that profit have had a good experience as a result of you making that profit. And I think that's a part of that new paradigm.
Absolutely. And when it comes to employees, incidentally, one of the reasons that they embrace the job that they have is they know why they're coming to work. They're crystal clear what the purpose of your company is. They're crystal clear what the catalyzing statement is and how it relates to the community at large that you're serving. When people know why the company exists, and they know why they have to come to work, and they understand management by objectives, what am I going to be held accountable to, they want to come to work.
Sure.
And don't you want to have happy employees that are committed to your success. And why would they be committed to your success? Because they're committed to their success, and their success fuels your success. If they're committed to objectives that are helping the company, everybody wins. Everybody's happy, and those happy employees will attract happy clients, and those happy clients will attract more happy clients. So it really works magical. You know, I call it short-term pain for long-term gain. Sometimes it's harder. You have to give up, you know, the quick revenue or the quick opportunity. You have somebody come into your business that your gut tells you they're not right for the business.
Right.
But short-term gain, let me just bring them on anyway as a client or as an employee, and then you always have long-term pain when you have short-term gain. So again, short-term pain, working hard, going through finishing school, implementing these practices, provide long-term gain. Short-term pain, long-term gain. Not short-term gain for long-term pain. Yes.
You know, incidentally, you know, one of the things that I know, Rick, you always are beating into my head is the sustainability of a business. And you'll see in all the principles as we're teaching, there's sustainability is built into the theme of everything that we're talking about, something that's going to last a long time. And that's where a new profit paradigm, it's not a matter of saying, who's the vendor I can find to supply me for the absolute cheapest price possible? You know what? If you can find a better vendor, somebody who's doesn't compromise maybe on, on their values, or somebody who's doing reckless things that might not have them around in the next year or two, spend a little more money, give up, again, short-term profit today, but have something sustainable in the way of a vendor relationship long-term, that's a part of new profit paradigm too. So I think that's a part of what's meant by people. So you've got profit, dollars, you got people, what's another P?
The next one is purpose. And we talked in the earlier module about your catalyzing statement. Your catalyzing statement is an extension of your purpose. And I believe that every single decision that you make in your life, both personally and professionally, needs to go through the lens of your purpose. And for me, my life's purpose is to inspire entrepreneurship. So when Patrick came to me and said, I've got this great idea for finishing school, and you might be wondering, why are you doing finishing school, Rick? Because my purpose in life is to inspire entrepreneurship. And I have to ask myself, when I'm presented with an opportunity, will this honor my purpose? And of course it does.
Right. And I think the whole idea, our friend Garrett Gunderson says this, turning purpose into profit. And that's really, I think, what the part of this paradigm is saying that it's not profit just to figure out how to make money. Again, that's old paradigm. Hey, how can I go out there and make money? It is, how do I take a purpose? How do I take my values? How do I take, what my soul is in life and turn that into profitability? So it kind of connects who you are to the profit in a much deeper level.
So I want you to think about, as you go through this formula, fill in, when you get your implementation guide, what your purpose is, and then go back and extend it to your catalyzing statement. And I want to just do a quick review here. The purpose of the United States space program before John F. Kennedy took office was to be the world's greatest space program.
Right.
And that's a great purpose. They had to make decisions through that lens. But then Kennedy said, I need to mobilize everybody. I need to get the whole country around this project. So he created the catalyzing statement. We will send a man to the moon and return him safely to Earth by the end of the decade of the 60s. And he said that when the materials were not even invented. We had to invent new metals as a country. So the point is, you've got now the component called money, which the money fuels the business, and that's the old profit paradigm, was just about money. The new profit paradigm is about money, meaning profit, people. So the next P is planet. And planet is the community around you. Every business touches their community.
Yes.
And if you notice, finishing school, Patrick and I are doing it together. We wanted to make sure that there was a component of finishing school that was taking care of the community. And that's what the third P represents, planet. It's considering those around you. And how we're taking care of the community or the planet, if you want to use this analogy, is we're having a one-to-one donation. For everyone that buys finishing school, we're giving finishing school to someone less fortunate. And there's companies out there that have perfected this model. Tom's Shoes, you may know about this model, but in Tom's Shoes, you buy a pair of Tom's Shoes on their website, and they give a pair of shoes to somebody from inside of a poor country. So these types of taking care of people less fortunate, or starting your own charity within your business, or donating a percentage of your revenue to a charity, however you decide to take care of the next P, it's up to you. We're going to dig further into this a little bit later, but I want to cover the high points.
You know, you'll see everywhere now in the new profit paradigm, big companies and small companies alike are adopting it. As a matter of fact, I've seen some small companies become very big companies, and I think in large part it's because of they get the planet side of the new profit paradigm. Perfect example is Cliff Bar. They donate 1% of profit to 1% for the planet. So basically, you think about it, who's aligned with kind of a healthy bar? And I remember when Cliff Bar, they were distributed in a very local level, et cetera. Now they're a huge company. I've been literally a customer of theirs for a lot of years. But the whole point is that they have a theme. If you go back to their purpose, you tie in the planet with the purpose of the company. They have a very environmentally conscious culture at Cliff Bar. So when they want to add the planetary side of the new profit paradigm, what are they going to do? They're going to say, hey, we'll do this 1% for the planet charity. We're going to donate 1% of all our profits to the planet. And I have to tell you, for the people who are the type of people who buy their product, that means a lot to them, and they feel better about buying that product, and it sticks to them. So the new profit paradigm shows the social side of the business, the social side of the entity, why it exists, and what impact it can have just beyond the old profit paradigm, which is money only. I can tell you also that I visited for a day a company called Patagonia, who you might know. And Patagonia, makes outerwear. They've got a great following. It's a privately held company. But the whole culture on that campus was amazing. And the way that they source their factories, where they're going to be, who works in them, they send people out there to make sure that the people are treated properly, humanely there. Otherwise, they won't buy from them. And there's so much built into them. And then on the people side, they allow people to go out and go surfing in the middle of the day. So they manage by objective. People need to be getting their work done, but they have this sort of value about blending their work and their life. So they look at the planet, they look at the people. They've been able to take the new profit paradigm and apply it to their company in an extremely effective way. And I could tell you that that company is a battleship. That company is something that's going to last and sustain a long period of time. They make good profit, and they profit in all 4 Ps in that way as far as the new profit paradigm is applied. And they are a company that's got a great culture and following that sticks to them because they practice exactly what Rick has been talking to you about here.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the right side of the formula, new profit paradigm. On the right side, you'll see an R with a 2 above it. That stands for recurring revenue. It's very interesting when people in the old profit paradigm start a business. It's all about what I call eating what you kill. At the beginning of every month, I remember when I was a sales manager many years ago, where the beginning of the month, no revenue was coming in. First week, second week, come on guys, come on gals, you got to get up, you got to get things going. And then the last week of the month, all of a sudden, sales would come in. Isn't that ironic? But it was a big struggle all the time. Well, the interesting thing is when you have recurring revenue, when you create products and services that have a recurring component to them, you don't have to worry so much about where's my next dollar coming from. And so I want you to consider, what can you do to create recurring revenue? And why is there an arrow going up next to it? Whenever a new opportunity or new venture or new anything comes before you, you have to think to yourself, is this going to increase revenue? Okay? The same thing if you look at the bottom of that equation, you have an E with a V next to it. That's expenses, and it means variable expenses. We're going to get into that in a moment, but when you're considering the formula, you have to think with that arrow going down, is this next opportunity or decision going to make revenue increase or expenses decrease? You have to think about that. And too often, people are all they care about is spending money and setting up a nice office and doing all of that. And I'm not against nice offices, but there's a time and a place for everything. Wait until you have profit and then spend the money on stuff like that. And so that's interesting. But on the recurring revenue component, there's a lot of people that say, well, I'm a dentist. I can't possibly have recurring revenue. Or I'm a realtor. I can't have recurring revenue.
Well, let's define what recurring revenue is,
Yeah.
just in case somebody doesn't understand the term. It's something that is literally predictable cash flow that's scheduled to come in on some sort of a recurring basis. So if you have some kind of a membership type business where people join and you bill them every month for membership to whatever it is, or anything that just is saying, hey, you know what, today is January, but I can tell you based on our the amount of customers we have today, I can tell you exactly what our revenue is going to be in March based on the scheduled income that's going to come from those people. So you're looking at the opposing side of recurring revenue, or the other type of revenue is what's called transactional revenue. And that is, I made a sale today, I transacted business. So this month's sales, how many transactions did we have? And the downside or the challenge with that is the fact that you don't know how many people are going to come through the door or come to the website or whatever type of business you have if it's fully transactional. Now, most companies probably have a balance between the two, correct? They'll have some recurring revenue, some transactional revenue. And what you're saying is start to increase the recurring revenue, the predictable scheduled income, and not that you want to decrease transactional revenue, but as you start to consider how to grow and expand, you're much better off growing and expanding more in the recurring format than in the transactional format.
Yeah, and a lot of people, as I said earlier, they think, well, I can't do that in my business. But I use the example of a dentist or a real estate agent. How would those two have recurring revenue? Well, let's talk about that. I have a friend who's a dentist, and he had to wait till somebody had a problem with their teeth for them to come in. So some months were lower than others, and his revenue tended to go like this. He decided, based on learning the new profit paradigm, to shoot a series of videos to teach dentists a latest technique in teeth whitening. And all of a sudden, he started selling a monthly subscription service to other dentists. And that business became larger than his existing business. Another thing that he started doing is selling plans to families. You know that you need your teeth cleaned so many times. You know that you need some emergencies every once in a while. You're going to need to get in. And you could sell almost like insurance. For $2,000 a year, we'll see your entire family one time, whatever.
And let me just throw the disclaimer in here. If you're going to ever do something like that, if you happen to be in some type of a professional practice, make sure that you're complying with state and federal regulations regarding insurance. Because if you're not licensed for insurance, there's certain things you can and can't do, and I'm just going to instruct you to vet anything legally before you start a business like that.
But the bigger point here is there are recurring revenue opportunities, but if you're stuck in the old profit paradigm, you won't even think of it. Let me give you another example. I was talking earlier about real estate agents. Real estate agents, when you ask them to consider how they can come up with a recurring revenue component, they're like, what do you mean? Well, think about this. A real estate agent has a service whereby they'll sell your home for you, but talk about long periods of dry without making any money. So my sister happens to be the top realtor in the county that she lives in. She's a real estate agent for only 11 or 12 years right now. And one of the things that you can do as a realtor, just to think about ideas of recurring revenue, and the reason I'm telling you this is no matter what you're doing right now, what you aspire to do, I want you to consider recurring revenue. There's a big breakthrough here for you. But a realtor can say, I'll start a service where it's $99 a year, and I'll email you homes in your area that have sold recently, what the selling price was, etc. Wouldn't that be a valuable service for people? Because people tend to sell their homes every 4 or 5 years. Well, if they paid $99 a year to have somebody email them whenever a home sold in their area, and they were getting emails once a month, who do you think they would get as a client when it's time to sell their home? It's the person who's been paying them $99 a year.
And plus, but that's valuable information. If you're, whatever business you're in, the reality is that you should have some level of expertise there. And if it's a transactional business, you are really monitoring the marketplace. And you kind of know. So for example, I have a wine collection. I really love wine. So it's really important for me to get information or notices on what's going on in the wine world, how to collect, etc. And I'm willing to pay for that information and be on these, paid for blogs or paid for information services that are really inexpensive, but nonetheless, they can hit my credit card every month. They know that that money is coming in. They continue to buy or to provide content for me. So it's not just transactional. They make money when I buy wine. What happens is they're also providing me with information because I'm interested in the industry. So it really, you get creative with this in ways that Rick was just describing. And I know if you thought about it long enough, if your business right now is mostly transactional, I know that if you've thought about it long enough, you'll find ways to create recurring revenue.
And we're going to give you on your implementation guide a series of questions to have you think about your business in a way where you come up with recurring revenue ideas. Every time I talk about this topic, and I've talked about it for years, people say, I don't have any recurring revenue opportunities. And I think that that is absolutely not the case. I don't care what business you're in, there are aspects of your business that can have a recurring revenue component, and a recurring revenue component will free your business up. It will create more profit. In many cases, it can cover the other P's as well, depending on how you execute it.
So now, we said you're increasing the R squared, which is recurring revenue. What does the down arrow mean next to the EV?
Yeah, I hope that in your business, you can get rid of your expenses. What do I mean by that? I don't like recurring expenses because recurring expenses drain your business.
We like recurring revenue, not recurring expenses.
You want to make your expenses variable. What do I mean by that? Well, it's interesting. I've walked in a lot of small companies and I'll meet salespeople and they're on high salaries. And I just don't understand that. Why would a salesperson be on a high salary? Why not make your salesperson, whatever they're selling for you, be tied to revenue that they produce? This way, you don't have to pay them unless they produce revenue. That's what variable means. Variable means that you only pay that expense when some revenue comes in with it. Here's another idea. Right now, there's a lot of empty real estate. There's a lot of opportunities for companies to go into a piece of real estate and say, we'll start paying rent in 9 months once we get off the ground. Now, the person who owns the property may say no, but there are a lot of situations, and I've dealt with this personally, where you could cut deals with landlords. It's not as simple as, you walk in, you start paying rent day one. There's a lot of variability to real estate now due to the recent crash and all the problems that we've gone through as a country. So you have to think of all of your expenses. Let's talk about another one. It is shocking to me when I see companies spending large dollars with marketing firms.
Right.
Does that make any sense? Why not find a marketing firm that is willing to get paid when you're successful, per client, per lead, something like that? Why do you think Google as a company has just exploded on the scene and the rest of the marketing world has been caught flat-footed? Because Google is all about pay for performance. And that's what you want to do with all of your expenses to the extent that you could.
And I mean, in any business, you would know your acquisition costs, how much it costs you to acquire a lead. You know your acquisition costs for how much it costs you to acquire a new customer and what your margins are, et cetera. This all can be calculated, so you can say, I can allocate a certain amount of money toward lead acquisition because a certain percentage of my leads turns into sales that has a certain gross profit attached to it, and I'll allocate this much towards the marketing. Rather than marketing being, geez, I'm going to write a check, throw it out there, hope it brings it back, and you're saying, oh, maybe it's going to be a home run or maybe it's a bust, and more times than not, it's bust. And now again, you have expenses that are just literally unpredictable against your revenue, as compared to saying, you know what? I know I'll spend more money on marketing when I have more leads that are generated, which means more sales, and less money on marketing when I have less leads. So the revenue and the expense lines track each other a lot closer as compared to them being separated things that you hope kind of track together and don't always. So there's a lot of ways. There's things you can outsource. I could tell you another one with professional practices again, chiropractic practices, especially, but I'm sure this would go for a lot of allied professional practices, is that they have, and they're more proprietorships, maybe there's only 1.5 employees, sometimes they have more if it's a bigger practice, but the challenge is that they have billing. A lot of them are billing third parties to get paid, the patient's insurance. And now they're sitting there saying, boy, that's first of all an expertise in and of itself to learn how to do that stuff. It's migrating where it's always changing as far as what the rules are. And you have somebody that you have employed that you're paying benefits to and salary and all the other things who's sitting there. And when the business is less busy, they're still paid full time. When the business is more busy, maybe they're getting behind but still being paid full time. And you've got that fixed expense against a variable thing that also is somewhat unpredictable as far as the rules. An easy thing to do is that there's companies that specialize in this. So you could outsource it. And they will take anywhere from, say, 4 to 7% of whatever they collect. It's performance-based. It's percentage of what they collect. You can factor it into how you do your cost structuring, and therefore it becomes a variable expense as compared to a fixed expense to try to get that same job done. So there's a lot of ways that this can be applied. But the idea, and I've seen you go into companies and do this, is you look at every expense, everything they're spending money on, and say what can be turned into a variable expense that's somehow tied to performance or revenue. And by changing all that, you don't have these droughts as far as your cash flow is concerned. It's always managed in a much more cohesive way.
And one thing I really want to stress throughout the program that's a year long are those 3 words we've talked about: simplicity, probability, and leverage. And I want you to have simplicity and leverage in your life and stop paying tuition. And tuition is the cost of time, effort, energy, money associated with making bad decisions. Let me give you an example of something that we've been through as a company directly that will hammer home a point on advertising and marketing in general. In 1995, we have a company that we invested in that used to take out 4-color, full-page ads in Forbes magazine. So we'd get a full-page ad in Forbes magazine, and the ad would say, call this 800 number and get your free tape on this particular subject. So when people called in for their free tape, they'd go on our mailing list, and we would try to open an account with them. Well, when we put that 4-color, full-page Forbes magazine ad in 1995, we would get about 1,500 to 2,000 calls every time. That same exact ad in 2005, 10 years later, guess how many calls do you think that we received? Same ad 10 years later. We would get less than 25 calls. How did we go from 1,500 calls to 2,000 down to 25 calls? And these are real numbers. We were very, very, very particular with managing all the data in our advertising campaigns in those days. Here's what happened from 1995 to 2005. Over that 10-year period, virtually everybody in the United States got internet. Everybody in the United States got a cell phone. Everybody in the United States realized that there used to be a few networks, and now there's 3,000 cable networks. There used to be a small number of magazines, and now there's thousands. The world just went bzzz. The volume of data that is hitting our eyeballs and our ears and our brains every day is so massive that we don't have time to focus on an ad. We don't have time to go through Forbes magazine, or any magazine for that matter. I absolutely love Forbes. It's a great magazine for me. I like business, but you know what? It sits sometimes closed in the corner of my office. I don't even get to it. People don't have the bandwidth. So when you're thinking about marketing, have a realistic view of what your expectation is. And that's why it's way more important to have marketing that you only pay for when the event happens.
So I think in reviewing the full formula now, kind of putting the pieces together in review, it's P4, which are the 4 Ps, equals increasing your recurring revenue over decreasing your expenses and making as many of those expenses variable as possible.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. I really want you, as you're listening to this tape, to be thinking, how can I improve my business? How can I improve my future? What can I add on to my business to help make more money? And when I say more money, I mean all 4 Ps.
Yep.
What can I do to decrease my stress? What can I do to increase the probability of my success? What can I do to create short-term pain? I have to work a little bit, just like this course, just like the implementation guide, but I'll have short-term gain. the purpose of this program is to get you to think. And often when we teach these materials, people will come back 3 weeks later with one thing that they implemented that created thousands and thousands of dollars of gain in their business. And that's the hope.
Well, and I think the summary statement here is that this is a new profit paradigm. Paradigm meaning a point of view, a view of reality. And how that translates is that you should, after doing this module, reviewing it, taking your notes, after doing the implementation guide and applying those things, the driving force behind that is saying, I need a new paradigm in how I think about profit for my business. Break the old mold, come up with a new paradigm saying, this is the new concept of what profit literally means to us. And it has these factors that are involved, the 4 different P's, the 4 different types of profit, the concept of recurring revenue, and the concept of variable expenses applied to your business, how you approach it. And if you make it a principle, again, not, hey, that was a good idea, let's go on next thing, but a principle of the business, meaning that now, starting tomorrow, decisions are made in the business relative to the new profit paradigm formula. When that happens, you're going to see changes happen, and it's like magic in a profound way. I looked at them as nuances until it got into the culture. And when it became a part of the culture, it was like, oh my God, this is just a different vibratory frequency of operation. It's not just a subtle thing, it becomes a profound thing. So that's what we want to see happen for you. Now let's talk about some applications for applying the new profit paradigm into your business. And Rick, there's basically a formula to follow. You just look at each aspect of the formula and then say, okay, how does this apply to my particular business? And it applies as much to a doctor's office, to an accountant, to an internet marketer, to a retail business. I mean, these are universal as far as this new profit paradigm. So how would you suggest they get started with this?
Well, the very first thing I'd like you to do to apply this information to your life is when you download your implementation guide, the formula is listed there. I want you to print an extra copy, make several if you have to, and put them around your office to remind yourself and to remind your staff of what the formula stands for. You always want your staff and everyone associated with your company to remember the 4 Ps and all decisions that you're making, but also when you're making business decisions, you want decisions that will increase your revenue, especially for the long term, and decrease your expenses and make as many variables as possible. So when you print your implementation guide, make extra copies of the formula and put them around your office for a reminder.
Incidentally, I also know some clients of ours who have literally printed out the formula itself, blown it up, and just put it over their desk. So it's a constant reminder because it really is a state of mind, isn't it? That's why we refer to it as a paradigm. I mean, literally, it's a model of thinking. And it takes a while to really get it into your spirit on a cellular level where you're living it that way, where you're automatically thinking that way, where it becomes a lens. And again, you're going to hear me say this probably so many times you're going to get sick of hearing it, but I want you to consider that this is a principle. It's not an idea. It's not the vogue thing that you learned at a seminar on a weekend and now you're going to try to apply it, or the next popular book. These are literally foundational principles. So it becomes your paradigm for how profit is made in your business.
Yes, that's correct, Patrick. It is a principle, and think about it that way. And of all the things that I've taught over the years, this one I've seen makes the most immediate impact. I'm thinking of one person in mind right now who was considering bankruptcy in his business. And within 1 month of implementing what you're about to learn now in terms of application, he was able to turn his whole life around. And I say life because his business was in jeopardy, his marriage was in jeopardy, because we all know that one of the hardest things on a marriage is financial and business issues. So this can help solve a lot of problems. So now let's get to how do we apply this now in your business. And let's talk about the first P, profit. And profit refers to dollars of profit, obviously. it's been said that the reason a business exists is to make a profit. I actually don't believe that. Right. I believe that the reason a business exists is to serve a customer, because if you're not serving a customer, then you won't make a profit. Think about it from that perspective. But I wanted to throw that in, that your business first and foremost exists to serve a customer so that you can make a dollar in profit. And so what I want you to think about now when we're talking about dollars in profit are some ways that you could generate more revenue. And we're going to give you some quick ones. But what I like to do when I look at businesses is take out the profit and loss statement and go to your revenue line and look at all the places that you generate revenue from. And what I want you to do is when you're sitting down with your team and coming up with objectives, I would hope that some of your objectives are associated with profit. So what I'd like you to do is pull out your profit and loss statement and look at where your revenue is coming from. Look at all your line items of revenue. And I want you to focus on, when you're creating your objectives with your team inside your business, quarterly, monthly, annually, you want to focus on revenue, clearly. But think of other ways that you can generate revenue from the existing revenue that you have. Think about ways to create, as an example, clubs for your clients. You could have silver, gold, platinum levels of service. You could create books and tapes. You can create membership sites online. You could have, as an example, an e-journal that you email out to people, and it gets them more familiar with your company. And on the bottom, you could say, click here for more information. So the idea here, though, is to get your staff involved in your business by printing out the revenue side of your P&L, looking at where your revenue comes from, and getting with your team and saying, how do we increase these numbers? What I like to do with businesses, and we're going to talk about this more on the expense side, is when we take the revenue side of your P&L, you want to put somebody's name next to each one of your revenue items and have them be responsible for maximizing the efficiency of that revenue item. So if you have, in your case, I think you've got like 10 different ways that you create revenue in your business. Imagine if one of your employees was next to each one of those items, and when they're trying to create their monthly, quarterly, or annual goals, clearly they want one of them to be to increase revenue, but now they have their name next to it, and they're responsible for that item, and they could get bonused to grow that. I love this idea.
Yeah, not only that, and remember with the formula, as you're approaching this, you want to really focus on recurring revenue. In other words, one of the things, the exercises I went through probably about a year ago or a year and a half ago when Rick was teaching this to me and I was really starting to kind of get the theme of it and shift the paradigm, was we look at several lines of revenue we have, but at that moment in time in my businesses, the majority of our revenue was transactional in nature. And when you're doing that, and if you have a transactional business, you understand the pain of that, the ongoing treadmill of having to constantly create new transactions all the time. Whereas when we started looking, saying, what could we do? What assets do we have on the shelf or in play that we could leverage to create more recurring revenue? So for example, if you're a doctor's office and you service patients, well, it's somewhat transactional. They're coming in on an episodal basis, and they're getting care or treatment, whatever you provide, and then they're leaving, and you got to keep that coming in. Maybe you can do things, for example, if you're more of a wellness center, you want to offer supplements. What you can do there is literally say, put them on an auto ship, monthly auto ship. The patient, client, what have you, wants to take a multivitamin. And I'm just giving you a very basic example here. You can either have a transactional base, say, we sell this much of our vitamins transactionally. Well, why not create a program to say, hey, it will save you money and you'll be consistent, which is important for this product to work for you, where we're going to auto ship you every month, bill your credit card, and you can cancel anytime you want, but it's a convenience for you, there's incentive to do it, etc. If you have any kind of a professional practice, even if you're an accountant, a lawyer, maybe you can have some type of membership, either site, informational blasts that go out, but people that can buy this, buy something from you that comes on a routine basis. So You could create audios, videos, things that people are interested in that will help educate them. Wellness clubs is something that happens in our Creating Wellness Centers, one of my businesses, where they have clubs where patients can join them and they pay a flat fee every month to come in once a week for a 1-hour seminar that's going to happen. And it's a routine now. They can literally, today you can say, how many people are in our club? Well, I could tell you 3 months from now what the cash flow from that's going to be based on today's numbers. And of course, you want to constantly grow that. So the idea is to look at all those revenue lines, figure out where you have opportunity either with increasing recurring revenue income, or if you don't have recurring revenue income now, create new products or projects that can create more recurring revenue for you. And that becomes an exciting thing. And then, as Rick was saying, put somebody's name next to it, have them own that project, incentivize them, based on the performance, et cetera. And you start to see that the business shifts. And when you have predictable cash flow through recurring revenue, man, it's just an entirely different type of business.
Also consider, in this application part of this module, raising your prices. I once consulted with a business where they raised their prices 3-fold. They lost half their customers because their prices were higher, but they completely simplified their business. And their profit went up because they didn't have to have so much staff. So a lot of people are so against raising prices, but that's a way to be more profitable. You can also sell products of other companies. A lot of companies can sell products of other companies and do some revenue sharing there. So you don't have to have all of the overhead associated with creating products. You can hire commission-only salespeople. Some companies, which I'm shocked to see a lot, have high base salaries and they're paying a lot of overhead toward salespeople. I don't advocate to have a commission only all the time. Sometimes you want to have somebody long-term work for you, and as they prove themselves out, then they can go on a salary as a salesperson. I would brainstorm with a peer group that's in your industry. Patrick and I actually met in an accountability group, and I think being in an accountability group is one of the most powerful things that you can do. But you can form peer groups inside your industry where the good people in your industry will want to share ideas. A lot of people say, well, why would I want to share ideas with people in my industry? Why not? A rising tide raises all ships. Now, you're not going to tell them secret formulas and whatnot, but you'd be surprised at how much your peers will share with you on ways to do business. So that covers the first P of the 4 Ps. So now I want to move to the second P of the left side of the new profit paradigm, and that's people. You absolutely know by now that having solid people around you, whether they're clients, whether they're friends, employees, vendors, whatever, helps everyone. Helps your business, helps your family, helps everyone, and you'll be more successful if you have solid people around you. What I would like you to do is, when you're looking at your business, write your 10 best clients down on a piece of paper and think about the attributes of these 10 people. What are they like? Where do they come from? What are their values? And what you want to do is find ways to attract more people like them. Now, you might be thinking, well, we already do that intuitively. But make this one of your objectives. Have your team work with you to identify the prototypical best client. And once you have that best client, create extra services for them. Put them in a special club of, you're the best client in the world for us. I was once involved in a charity, and this person who contributed the most to the charity, by far, this one individual contributed more dollars to this charity than everyone else combined over a 4-year period. And at the board level, I kept saying, why don't we do something special for this person? And it didn't occur to them to do something special. So we ended up having a night to honor this person. It was a black tie event. 300 people in the community showed up. And it was a massive success. And this person was beaming. So think about ways to celebrate your best clients. And you may want to do this with your best vendors and all of the best people in your life.
Yeah, and another example of this would be like if you're a doctor's office of some variety, a patient appreciation day. Basically, you set it up an event. It's going to be a day where you're going to be hosting whatever you want in your office. It can be hors d'oeuvres. It could be like a daytime kind of party snack, and have maybe families that if you want to bring kids in, what have you. You can have clowns, balloon benders. Anyway, you just create an event to appreciate your patients if you're a doctor. If you're a retail store, you want to appreciate your patrons that come in. You create a day to appreciate them. You might have discounts on your stuff. Maybe to follow Rick's lead, maybe you have a list of the people that spent the most money in your business over the past year, and that might add up to a group that's a sizable group. And you'd say, you know what, I'm going to show them my appreciation. I so appreciate the fact that you're my best customer, best client, best patient, what have you, that we're going to spend a little money today and we're going to host something that's going to make you smile and make you feel special. So there's things that you can do that are fun, that would be appreciated and would be outside of the norm when it comes to basically embellishing your relationship with people.
And think back to the prior module when we talked about rituals. Think about rituals to appreciate key groups of people in your business and in your life. And that will help the left side of the pyramid create more revenue for you as well. Think about it from that perspective. All of these modules and all of this information ties together. All right, let's move to the third P. P number 3 is planet. And you know that planet represents your community. It could be your block, it could be your town, it could be your state, it could be the whole world. I don't know how big you plan to think about your business, but we live in a global society now, and you can get your message all over the world very quickly. So what I want you to do is print your implementation guide, look at the exercise that's talking about planet, and create, again, some opportunities with your team to create objectives around increasing the awareness of your company to your community, however large that community is. So this could be critical to your business. In the examples that we used, there are companies whose sole reason that they exist is to serve a community, and that drives their profit. So you could think about, as we talked about, Tom's shoes. If you buy a pair of Tom's shoes, they give a pair to someone less fortunate. So you could wrap that all together in your business, and that could be part of your brand. And now the fourth P is purpose. Purpose was hammered home in a prior module. I want to make sure, though, that all of your business decisions have as a foundation your purpose and your catalyzing statement. Are the decisions that we're making, both short-term and long-term, in full alignment with our purpose, which also aligns with your catalyzing statement? So you want to make sure that your purpose and the essence of your purpose is stamped all over your company, all over your brand, and all over your people. So that covers the left side of the new profit paradigm. Now we're going to move to the right side of the formula, which you see on your screen now. Whenever people see this for the first time, and I remember Patrick asking me, he goes, why do you have arrows on there? And the reason I have an arrow going up next to the R is because I want you to think in your business about always doing things to make the R go up. You want revenue increasing. Why is there an arrow down next to expenses? Expenses are bad for business. You want to make them as low as possible.
And I already gave examples of this earlier as far as going to the P&L, look at your revenue lines, see what's there that's recurring, what's not recurring, what can you take from a transactional revenue standpoint to a recurring revenue standpoint, et cetera. So get creative. And actually, I also would recruit other people either that are in your business or some of your best customers, et cetera, and you can talk to them about what services you could provide them that they would enroll in. Not say, what would you just buy one time, but what would you enroll in as a part of your rhythms for your life that we can add a lot of value with what we do. So we gave those examples already. It's time for you to go and do the exercise now and figure out how can you increase the recurring revenue in your business. And I got to tell you, you'll start to see as that starts to increase in a world that is increasingly more uncertain, especially in the business context of uncertain, the predictability of cash flow becomes king. So really give this one some serious thought and go to work on it.
I even want to go so far as to say to you, when we look at businesses to invest in, we like to see recurring revenue at least 50% of their revenue. In other words, the automatic revenue that your sales force doesn't have to go out and create. So if you don't have at least 50% of your revenue as recurring, at least that as a goal, try to create that. And what a lot of companies say is, well, it's impossible for us to create recurring revenue with our existing revenue items. And that may be true. What I would suggest then is think about other ways and other new products that could be recurring revenue. So you don't have to go out and hunt every day for new business. Recurring revenue is something that could set you free. You may even want to consider, again, we talked about it earlier, assigning this to one of your executives or one of your employees to help you find more recurring revenue. Don't put all the weight on your shoulders. Okay, now we're going to go to the expenses. You notice that the expenses are on the bottom. What I'd like you to do is the exercise we mentioned before. Print your expenses from your P&L. Just print the whole list. What I'd like you to do is put someone's name in your company, and it could also be an outsourced vendor. Put someone's name next to all of your expense items. The first time I did this exercise about 14 years ago, it was unbelievable. We had about 40 different expense items, and we just went down our list of employees. The company that I'm referring to, I was the CEO of, and we had 8 people inside that company, and I literally took all 8 employees and just listed their name. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Started again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there was some of them had 3 because I listed it 3 times. But the fact of the matter is, each employee was then responsible for that expense item. And we even bonused them to get that expense item as low as possible. And you could bonus them if they can convert a fixed expense to a variable expense. You know what? Don't put all this on your shoulders. Enlist your people to help you. This could be a powerful exercise. One of the things that I did for Patrick's company, and I encourage you to do it, is I call it a war room. And I'll go into the company, spend an entire day, and sit there with the executive team and go through these exercises with the executive team. And in one day, we've turned around many, many companies. It's an expensive day. However, it's a fun, it's a profitable thing to do. It creates a lot of energy and trust in your team. And at the end of the day, when we're leaving, we've got the expense sheet listed with somebody's name next to it as one of the exercises. It's very powerful.
I would say, incidentally, that that's a really good strategy, is the war room, when you want to move into new profit paradigm, because you really, this isn't, I don't think, a subtle, like, you ease it in. I think it's best to take your top executives into a room and spend a day just going through and applying all the stuff across the board in your business. So you bring in your financial reports, you bring in the key people, and you just start at A, you go to Z, do the whole process, and it's amazing the kind of magic that emerges from that. So I think that's a great strategy to apply to this particular module, is the war room strategy. And you might be sitting there saying, but I really don't know how to do it. It's simple. Clear a day, bring the people in. Here's the new profit paradigm formula. Start with the 4 Ps, move to the other side, just go through everything as we've just been explaining it for the past 10 or 15 minutes, and let everybody document everything that's coming out. Let everybody contribute, and you're going to leave there with some phenomenal ideas. You're going to leave, I can guarantee you're going to leave there with some expenses that are going to get cut immediately. That's going to increase your profit, lower your expenses, and then anything that can be variable, which is where we are now, talking about variable expenses, is that you want to remove basically the pothole thing. What happens, for example, almost any company to some degree, if you're doing sales, and I don't care if you're a company of 2 people or a company of 2,000, if you are doing sales out there, you've got some seasonality to these sales to a degree. Some industries much more than others, some market sectors more than others, but there's always going to be a little bit of a ride of ups and downs during the course of the year. And if you have salespeople, for example, who are mostly salary with some little bit of commission, what happens? Well, when their sales are really good, the income against those sales is also very good, meaning that you got those salaries there, and you got so much income, it's no problem servicing that expense. But what happens if your sales team for 2, 3, 4 weeks, 1 or 2 months, that their sales are really low? They go into a squat, yet you've got these high salaries to service. So suddenly now, on a cash flow basis, what happens to your business? Ooh, you start to see your cash flow come down, you get nervous, you go into reaction mode, and then you want to start, what are we going to do? We got to market, we got to do this, we got to do that, and then you start spending money kind of in an unplanned way. Strains your cash flow more, hopefully it brings some sales back. You get the sense of what I'm talking about. It's kind of a part of almost any business, especially an entrepreneurial business. So now imagine that your salespeople, as Rick talked about earlier, that they're mostly commission-based. So what happens? Well, when the sales are down, you're paying out a lot less commission. The salaries are little to nothing, so that doesn't strain your cash flow, and vice versa. Suddenly when sales are up, well, the cash is there to pay those commissions. So you start looking through with your team, what can we do? Now, I can tell you, just from personal experience, especially when we did our war room together, at first, and I want to warn you about this, and this is important to the application, you're going to get resistance, and you are going to have resistance in your own head. This is the way we've always done it. This is just a part of our company culture. We can't make that variable. We can't go to our sales team and ask them if they can take a lower salary and a bigger commission. We can't, et cetera, et cetera. So when the sentence starts with "we can't," you have to hit the pause button, hit delete, and start over again.
I'm laughing here because when I came to Patrick's company and did this about a year ago, I started the meeting by saying what we're about to do is going to be very difficult. So here's the rules. Nobody can lie, nobody can get defensive, and nobody needs to explain anything. And are there any sacred cows? Meaning, are there any items, Patrick, that you are absolutely not going to do? And there was one item. He says, this is off the table. And we respected that, but at least we knew at the beginning. So it is going to be a long day. Patrick's been through it. The reason I call it a war room is because when you go to war, you want to understand what all your resources are. What are your assets? And you literally go line by line, all your assets. So a war room is really a bonus item in this section, and we weren't even going to talk about it. So I'm glad we did. I'm glad it came up.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, you want to have these day-long meetings with your executive team. And if you're a really small company, it could be with people close to you or a key vendor. If you're not getting outside your business and talking through issues for an entire day, once a year, at least once a year, you want to get away for a full day. We actually do it quarterly, and some companies do it even more than that. I told you in a prior module, companies like Walmart get their management teams together every week on a Saturday. So you really can't afford to not meet with your team. People say, well, we don't have time to meet, and I say, you don't have time not to meet. So we're not going to get really granular on the application here. You've got all the information you need once you pull down your implementation guide and you go through that with a fine-tooth comb and you think about ways to implement the new profit paradigm in your business. But more importantly, I'd like you to internalize this formula. So you're thinking about it daily, and when new products come into your mind to create, or new subsidiary companies, you're thinking about how does this fit in the new profit paradigm.
In closing out this module, a lot of rich content here. This one's going to take some effort on your part. It's going to take some time, but it's worth the time, so make sure you follow through.
And what I like to add is simplicity. This formula is very simple. Short-term pain, though, will cause long-term gain. Although it's very simple, it might be hard to implement at first. But as I said, short-term pain will give you long-term gain. That simplicity leads to what? Probability. It will increase the probability that you'll be more successful, you'll be more profitable, and you'll touch more people. Remember earlier we said businesses aren't only about profit, they're about building customers, creating clients, and serving their needs. And then lastly, leverage. This will allow you to leverage. Leverage means doing more with less. Leverage means having more result with less effort. I remember hearing Bill Gates say, he goes, you know, when I started my company, I used to put in 100 hours of work to produce 1 unit of result. But a few years later, I put in 100 hours of work and it produced 100 units of result. He said, now, when I put in 100 hours of work, it creates 1,000,000 units of result. Now that's leverage, and that's where we want you to go. So have fun with this module. We'll see you for the next one.
Thank you for watching this module of Business Finishing School. Let your business brain finish what your entrepreneurial heart started.